So to start out United States history, we're going to start way, way, way back. We're going to start with the 13 colonies, and I'm going to help you guys kind of break down these 13 colonies, and we're going to go through the different types of regions. When examining the 13 colonies for this United States history course, we're going to examine them in the three different types, and really it's divided by region. So the first region we're going to talk about is going to be the Mid-Atlantic, but the Mid-Atlantic to the north is the New England region, and to the south is they're going to be the southern colonies. And each part of these 13 colonies, they have a different role. This has a lot to do with not only who is founding them, but kind of where they're located. Geography plays a huge role. What kind of resources do they have, and kind of where can they be most productive for these major mother countries that are colonizing them. So to get started here, you're going to have things such as Fast Five questions. Now, it says on here, write these questions. They might be questions from your exam, and they're they're going to be more recap questions of, hey, do you kind of understand, where we are and what we've been talking about? And they're really, really good. And if you're taking notes on the side, or even if you're taking them on your guided notes, I would really use those to make sure that you're following along and you're understanding these main things. Now, the first question it's going to ask is, what is a colony? And so usually I go around the room and ask what a colony is. And, it says, why are the colonies established? Have you ever heard of Jamestown? Name some skills you were needed if you were stranded on a remote island. And then what is malaria? So with this being the first Fast Five, if you will, it's called the Fast Five for 5 questions. This is going to be, kind of, you don't know, you're not supposed to know really any of these questions. And this is really what we're going to be hitting on today. So let's go ahead and get rolling. These are going to be your standards. We're starting with standard 1. We'll be working our way down through the list. So when talking about the 13 colonies, I said they're going to be divided into 3 regions, and here are the regions here. When you're looking at the New England colonies, you're going to have these colonies that are located here in blue, and they are going to be Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, and Connecticut. Okay, and these are located right here. All right, then the Mid-Atlantic colonies, these are going to be New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware. And then if you work your way down here to the south, really we're going to focus on a lot of parts here today in Virginia, but you have Virginia, Maryland, North Carolina, South Carolina, and then Georgia down here in the farthest south. Okay, and then I'm going to tell you guys some things that you should highlight on your packet. So these are the key important points in my mind of things that you need to know. And right here, there's going to be references to places. So when you're looking at New England colonies in your 4 boxes, the one I want you to highlight is going to be Massachusetts. Okay, highlight Massachusetts. When you're going to the Mid-Atlantic, we're going to need to know, really focus on New York and Pennsylvania. And then in the South, go ahead and highlight Virginia. Now, these is not to say that the other ones are not important, but for what I'm going to be teaching you in this lecture, these are the ones that you kind of need to keep in your brain and in your mind as we advance, okay? Now, we're going to start off in Colonial Virginia. Colonial Virginia is very important. I kind of want to frame your mindset as we get into Colonial Virginia. And, a big part of what we're going to talk about today is going to involve Jamestown. And I want to kind of set your mind on a certain movie that we usually watch in class, but since we're digital, we're not going to be able to watch it, and that's Pocahontas. And I want you to think about Pocahontas, and I want you to think about John Smith and Pocahontas and kind of not only the differences between them, but where they're coming from, what their role is. And, a big part of this unit in my eyes is going to talk about the relationships between Native Americans and these European settlers that are coming over. So kind of keep that in your brain as we go. Now, you're going to get to Jamestown, all right? Now, Jamestown says America, first American colony. So it says the first permanent English colony in North America was Jamestown, Virginia, founded in 1607, which really the key word here is, some of you are probably like, well, it's not the first one, right? So there's this thing called Roanoke, which is going to be established before this, but it actually fails due to the fact that, number one, they're not prepared, and number two, their relationships with Native Americans weren't great. But the key word here is going to be permanent, right? So the first permanent English colony in North America is going to be Jamestown, Virginia, and it's going to be founded in 1607, which is a really, really, really long time ago. All right, now here's the thing. If you're wondering, why is it called Virginia? Well, because it was a business venture of something called the Virginia Company. So if you can kind of picture Pocahontas when they're coming over, and I have this, this really interesting graphic in my head, and I'm listening to them sing the song of the Virginia Company, and they're coming over, and it's kind of the opening scene of Pocahontas when they're all getting on the ship, and they're talking about why they're coming over here, right? So when you're looking at here, it says a business venture, okay, a business venture, and then the Virginia Company. Now a company, I usually ask, well, what's a company, right? So just kind of form your mindset and just kind of think about that. And a company is something that makes money, right? So, Nike, Walmart, all these are types of companies and their businesses, right? Business venture. So the goal of the Virginia Company and the goal of Jamestown being founded is that they are trying to find things that are going to make people money, right? And by people, I mean the Virginia Company. And the idea is they want to find gold and other valuable resources that they can send back, and that they can, send back to their mother country, and they're going to be able to say, hey, this is the whole purpose of it. We're trying to make money. Now, here's the problem. Number one, they're not really prepared. You would think after the first one that they'd be more prepared, but they're not. They're not really prepared of what is about to face them in Jamestown, and they're going to suffer from a lack of leadership. They're not going to find any gold. If any of you have been to Jamestown, okay, they don't find gold as if that's what they were looking for. And when you're thinking about Pocahontas, they're digging, and this whole big battle scene is kind of going on, and the Native Americans are kind of looking at them like, what are they doing? Like, they don't really get it, because this is the other difference. The Native American lifestyle is just so much different than the European lifestyle, and the Europeans are there for money. So again, Jamestown is going to suffer from a lack of leadership. They're not going to find gold, and they don't really understand what type of food to grow. It's kind of marshy. Yes, they are along a waterway, but they just can't grow the right food there. If any of you have ever tried to grow a garden, or your family try to grow a garden, you understand that it's hard, right? It's hard to have that green thumb, they call it. I remember when I was younger, my grandmother and my great-grandmother had a garden. My grandmother had one in the back of her house, and that was kind of my role, was very limited, meaning like I was the guy that got the rocks out, which you all understand that's a problem if you are gardening, and but it's very hard, and it's even harder when you're trying to grow something that is not suitable to that environment, right? So just real quick, I'm going to hit on some questions here. So it says, what is the primary goal of the Virginia Company? When I said I'm hitting on these questions, I'm referring to this guided note packet. So if you're listening to this without the guided notes, you can find them on CTLS. You can find them on my blog. They're available to you. Email me if you need them. And if you're listening to this and you're filling out your packet, this is where I'm at. So it says, what is the primary goal? And that's money, right? The Virginia Company is designed to make money. Okay, and it says the settlement of Jamestown, founded in 1607, was located near what body of water? That's the Chesapeake Bay. And why did many of these early colonial settlements settle along waterways? So there's a couple of reasons. Number one, security, right? If you're backed up against a waterway, if something does happen, then you have the ability to flee or to get out of that area. But number two, it is easy access for trade and for fishing, and also for transportation if you're trying to get around the area, right? All right, so let's move on. All right, so this picture kind of gives you a kind of background of, what did Jamestown look like during that time. But I like this picture better. Now, I kind of want to take a moment. I kind of want to stop here because I think it's important that you frame your mindset on, what's kind of going on here, and the relationships between the Native Americans and the relationships between these European settlers. And this is kind of where I want you to stay. This is kind of where I want you to hone in right here. Okay, so imagine, let's put ourselves in, I think it's important that when you're trying to kind of analyze history, you want to put yourself in these other people's shoes. So let's put ourselves in these Native American shoes, right? So let's say that we're sitting here and we are, just kind of enjoying our day, and we are near the beach, and we see, okay, well, there's this, we look out into the water, and there's a boat, right, which is something probably larger than any of these Native Americans have seen before, right? And so this boat then has another smaller boat, and it comes to the shore. Okay, so they're kind of curious, and the idea is, these Native Americans, when they see these European settlers, and when they see them get off this tiny boat, the thought process has to be, who are you, and kind of what do you want, and why are you the way you are? Why are you dressed like that? Why is your skin tone like that? Because you got to remember, these people have never, ever, ever seen somebody like this before, because they're not indigenous to North America, right? Just like the Native Americans are. So this is a whole new thing for them. And when you first meet somebody, this kind of flipping it. When you first meet somebody today, you usually introduce yourself. Hi, how are you? I'm Coach Howells. I shake your hand. I look you in the eyes, the whole thing. And for the most part, people are generally pretty nice to each other, right, when they're meeting each other. And now, go back to the Native Americans and kind of, their role here and, their vision. All right, well, let's think about this. How would you feel if you were the Native Americans and these individuals got off this boat right here? All right, and the first thing they do is they start building fences. Okay, that's a barrier, right? So you got to say, okay, well, clearly, even if they've never seen these people before, clearly the fact of that they're building a fence or a fort is letting you know kind of their intentions and kind of how they're going to be looked at, right? They would talk about the Native Americans as savages, and so the relationship between the Native Americans and these European colonizers are not necessarily great by any stretch. Okay, now, says the early American government. All right, so to oversee the colony at Jamestown, the Virginia Company established a legislative body that was called the House of Burgesses. All right, so the House of Burgesses is the first self-government that is created in the New World. Okay, now this is very, very important, and it says representatives are both appointed by the Virginia Company and or elected by land-owning males. Okay, so that's a big one. Notice it's highlighted and underlined. So I kind of want to hit on this first as we wrap up our first video of the year. And this is a big part, because I want you to understand that these people that are coming over to the colonies are not necessarily wealthy. They're coming over to a place called the New World, and that's because they are looking for this new life and this new way. And they're usually not very rich. They don't have a lot of money. They're looking for this new opportunity, right? And I think it's important that you understand, in England, they did not have a say in the rules, or they did not have a say in the law of the land, because they're not a part of Parliament, right? So Parliament is the English government, and they're not a part of that. So anything they want to set up or have rules, they can't do that. Well, when they're coming over here, okay, Parliament is not over here. So what they set up is the House of Burgesses. Now, this is important because they're having their hand in setting up their own legislative body. Okay, now this is very important because they are now getting to make the rules that govern themselves. Now, you all may think, okay, big whoop, who cares? But let me explain you this. When you have the ability to make rules that are, followed by your community, and adjust those rules and do what's best for your community for the first time ever and make your own decisions, it gives you this sense of, pride, this sense of being, and it's going to really, really, really start to affect the way that these colonists are not only viewing themselves, but possibly, as we work towards the American Revolution in 100 some odd years, possibly the way that they're viewing the king. All right. Real quick, at the settlement of Jamestown, as I finish up, pros and cons when you're looking at your packet. Really more cons is what I want to say. So cons, you're going to have disease. That's malaria. The soil is not good for farming. They have bad relationships with the Native Americans. And the pros about this location, and this is what my next video is going to pick up on, the pros about this location is you can have some crops, And the crop that we're going to focus on in our next video is going to be the crop of tobacco, which is a cash crop. Okay, so put that under the pros. All right.